Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Next in Gaming, a bi-weekly show where we interview opinion leaders from the gaming industry for better insight on how you can improve your stream, grow your audience, and more. My name is Randy, and I'll be your host for today's show. To run today's show, I'm using Restream Studio. Restream Studio is an all-in-one solution for running your live streams. It's by far my favorite and easiest way to go live, with the ability to add guests, change scenes, and much more. If you'd like to learn more, please visit us at restream.io/studio, or the link right here below. Today, our guest is Gabriel Causse, the Business Operations Manager for Magic Gaming and the Orlando Magic NBA team. Gabriel is an experienced partnership development professional with a passion and knowledge of both traditional sports and esports. During today's show, we'll talk about everything from esports and more. From Gabriel spearheading the adoption of esports at the NBA to esports' role in the Olympics. Remember, this show is live, and I'll be taking your comments throughout today's show. So if you have a burning question, pop it into the chat and we'll answer it live. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Gabriel.
Hey, thanks, Randy.
It's great to have you today. I can see that we already have a couple viewers joining us. So keep in mind, if you're here, let's say hello. Let us know where you're joining from, and we'll be sure to answer them and see where everybody's coming from. I kind of gave a bit of an intro about you already, but I'd love to kind of open the floor and give you, the time to tell our audience exactly who you are, what you do, your elevator pitch, if you will.
Sure. Well, hey, first of all, thanks for having me. Great being here. As a short summary, so I was actually born in France. I've been here in the US for about 12 years. Decided to come here to college, studied sports. And so my whole background and my whole life has always been in sports. I was a huge soccer fan, still am. I was a soccer player. And I've always played video games on the side. I still do. But as you get older and as more responsibilities come up and you have kids and it starts getting a little bit harder. So I after college, so I got my degree in sports management, did my internships with the Olympic Committee back in Colorado, and then started working in sports. I worked for a professional soccer team, became their director of sponsorship out there, and eventually got the job with the Orlando Magic about 3 years ago. So to give you a little bit of background on the job itself, I have been overseeing all esports initiatives and partnerships for the Orlando Magic. So as part of the NBA 2K League, and then I can give you a little more background as we go, but there's a little more to that. But yeah, I started as the esports partnership manager, and then I recently got called to be the business operations manager for my game.
Awesome. I mean, you mentioned already that you kind of always had an interest in gaming, and I feel like that almost leads perfectly into my first question. Is it that that kind of interest in gaming, or what was it that led you to choose esports as your career path and kind of follow it to where you are now?
You know how it is, like in a career, there are things that you plan, and there are others that just opportunities that show up, and you
Hmm.
get to take it when it's time, right? I never thought I'd actually make a career in esports. To me, it was always sports. Like I said, I worked for a professional soccer team. I worked at the Olympic Committee. Like, so it was always, I thought I was just going to be my whole life spending time in traditional sports. But when I heard about the Magic and the NBA 2K League, I thought um, I thought this is the perfect opportunity to do both. So I knew when I interviewed for the Magic job, they asked me the question. They said, "Are you a gamer?" And I remember telling them, I don't consider myself a gamer. Like I'll play, I have
Hmm.
interest in gaming, but I don't follow esports per se, right? And they told me, for the position that we're trying to recruit, we're looking for a business professional. And so that's what I did. So I started like that, and then I remember literally flying back to Colorado from Florida after the interview, and watching documentaries on Netflix about esports and trying to really like understand, because again, you can understand gaming without understanding the space of esports, right, which is competitive gaming. So to be honest, I didn't really pick that path. It kind of happened, and I felt like it was a great opportunity to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I totally see that. Just kind of like having the door open and the opportunity to rise and just going for it. Which kind of even again brings me right into the next question of your role at the NBA. You interviewed for that esports partnership manager, as I saw from your LinkedIn for the NBA, and now I think even as of recently of this year, you switched into your new role as business operation manager. Congrats, by the way, on rising up even further within the industry that you're in. Uh, so what was it like being the first esports partnership manager for the NBA, and how does that kind of differ from your role now as the business operations manager?
Yeah. So being the first esports manager in NBA history really doesn't say much about me. I could have just been there, at the right time at the right place. I think it speaks highly of the Orlando Magic and the vision they had for esports, right? If you look at the 2K League, I think a lot of teams approach the 2K League as, hey, we've got an NBA team, we've got resources from the NBA side, we're used to selling, we're used to marketing, all right, we're used to content, social media. Let's just add esports to that, and then try to build the esports property that way. For us, we looked at it the other way. We thought from day one, this is a different entity, right? It's a different beast. We have a different audience. So what we try to do is literally just build Magic Gaming as its own, right? And then obviously we can use the resources from the NBA because we're part of the Magic.
Mm.
And so, for example, we had a director of gaming, right? I was the partnership manager. We hired a marketing manager. We hired a content producer. Um, we have obviously the players, a head coach. Like we even have a physical trainer for the guys. Like, right? So we literally just built this like an NBA property, right? If that makes sense. And then you also asked about on the partnership side, like what are the differences between um, being handling partnerships and then business as a whole for Magic
Yeah.
Gaming. So on the partnership side, it was everything from it's the entire sales cycle, if you will. So from prospecting to putting decks together, to negotiating a deal, signing the contract, to even to the point where once the contract is signed, then you have to have somebody activating the contract, right, and the assets. So that's on the NBA side, they might have 4, 5, 6 people doing that. On the esports side, there's one. Obviously, you get help from the other guys in the team, but the sales process is on you. When now it's a lot more. I have to handle still partnerships, but also have marketing, social media, content, right? And I've got guys under me who obviously are experts at doing that.
So I wonder almost, was it difficult because, as the first NBA partnership manager, you're kind of almost spearheading that organization. Was that task difficult to bring people who, traditionally in the NBA are more focused around sports as they were defined for hundreds of years to kind of now as the definition changes to include gaming and esports and as a whole. Was that a difficult process and transition?
Yes and no. I mean, if you're in partnerships, then partnerships is about, building relationships, right? Like long-term relationships. So whether you try to do that out of sports, in sports, or in esports, technically it's the same approach. Yes, you may talk to different people. I think the main difference there is, in sports, I don't need to tell a marketing manager, hey, this is what soccer is about, right? Like you have to kick it with your feet, and then you have to put in the goal. Like when in esports, that's pretty much what it is. Like you have to be able to tell people and brands like, hey, here's how big esports is. Here's the potential behind it. Here's what we can do. Right. So that was to me the main difference. But then on the NBA side, it's interesting because the NBA has been around forever, right? Like the Magic have been around for 30 years. And yet, when you start a new project like this, you're starting from scratch because like it helps for me to have that title. And when I go to brands, I can say, hey, listen, like I work with the NBA, with the Orlando Magic NBA team. But here is the new project that we have, right? Here is what we're trying to accomplish. So you have all the resources from the NBA side, but at the same time, you're still starting a new brand. Like so, you get to start from scratch. Like you gotta work on your marketing, campaigns. You gotta work on like growing your social media handles, right? From literally zero to what it is now. Like so, if that answers your question, it's not easy because you still have to bring a brand from the ground up, or build it from the ground up. But it is easier, in my opinion, than having to just start from nowhere, right? Because we do have a massive brand behind us helping.
Exactly. And it's the best. I almost feel like the best brand to push esports as a legitimate sport and to propel it further is the NBA. Just to acknowledge some people in the chat here, I noticed that we have Lawson and DJ Bobby joining from YouTube and Periscope. Lawson says, which I feel like you almost kind of answered already, which was how do you deal with people who don't see esports as a sport? And then you kind of mentioned that you really have to kind of explain from scratch. Is there any specific lingo that you use to help those traditional people move over into the esports realm and to understand it as this thing that you should be investing your time and your money in? It's the next big thing type deal.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it helps to know the sports industry, because that's the language, that's the lingo that they understand. So it's easier to show them, like even on the decks that we create, right, for those brands, it's easier to show them, hey, look, in traditional sports, you have a team, right, which is the Orlando Magic, and then they play a sport which is basketball, and they play in a league called the NBA, right, and then right next to it, we literally have, you have Magic Gaming as a team. We play digital basketball and we play in the NBA 2K League. Like, so literally trying to like, compare to make them understand what it is. But, to go to this on the sales side of things, I think you use the word convince. And if you're trying to convince somebody about esports, then you're talking to the wrong person, right? You're approaching it the wrong way. Because, we live in a world where, especially with the pandemic now, where people at least have heard of esports in some capacity, right? And what we're trying to do is just show them, hey, esports is a huge space, and I actually, it's funny to give you a quick example. I had a brand a few weeks back telling me, hey, you know what? Like we jumped on the call, talked about the potential of partnering, and they're like, the truth is, like we partnered with a team, an esports team back in 2016, and we tried something and it didn't work. And I was like, oh, I want you to understand what you just told me. Like, you telling me, it's like if I tell you, hey, my brand partnered with a baseball team in 2016. Now you guys are a basketball team, but I just still don't think it's going to work because it's sports. Like in esports, there's so many different things you could be doing, right? So many different teams and leagues and approaches. So, to go back to your point, I think it's super important on the partnership side to educate people about it, but also let them know, I'll be taking you through this, right? This journey. Like you don't need to be, as a brand, you don't need to understand esports perfectly. Like I don't understand sports perfectly, but I like watching it. And so if somebody wants to reach me, right, as an individual, they better have their brand in soccer because that's what I watch, right? Or basketball in this case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the what you said there about convincing. If you have to convince somebody to invest in esports or what esports is, it's not worth you're not speaking to the right people. I almost feel like it's reinventing the wheel. You don't need to explain to somebody what the wheel is. The wheel exists. Everybody knows what the wheel is. Kind of like just start from that point, which I think is a great point. You mentioned a couple times I've seen in your LinkedIn and what you've done in the past. You've been working with partnerships and sponsorships and building those brand relationships, even sometimes I bet from the ground up. What sort of advice or tips would you give to a streamer, a gamer, even somebody who's looking to get into a job like yours, on how they can build those relationships, grab those leads, and turn them into the next big partnership?
Yeah, I actually get that question a lot. I think what I'd say is partnerships is, and I don't want to get cheesy here, but partnerships is really all about relationships, right? Like, to me, I'm in partnerships not because I'm a salesman. I don't feel like a salesperson.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, we don't sell something. We do sell, but we don't sell something that, like if I was selling, knives or cars, right? And the person buys it and goes, and you never see them again, right? Hopefully. In this case, like anything you sell, you literally gonna have to take these brands through it, through the whole partnership, and have them, and or do what you told them you would do.
Hmm.
So because of that, to me, partnership is all about long-term relationships. I've literally kept in touch with partners from my old job with the soccer team, right? It's been over 3 years that we don't partner anymore. I don't get anything from staying in touch, right? It's not like I get commissions from this, but yet, we became super good friends because that's what we created when we were partners. Right? So to me, that's the main thing. Is I felt like it's all about being able to show the brands that you're not there for their money, like you're there to build something together, right? And then both brands, that's what's called partnerships,
Hmm.
and not sponsorships, because once there's something in place, then you try to grow each other's brand and build together. Right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like the idea of kind of, really focusing on the fact that it's a relationship. It's not just a business transaction. It's about, building rapport and going the extra mile. That's a really great way to put it. Um, so now let's kind of focus on probably a topic that everybody wants to forget and wants it to, as quickly as possible, become a long and distant nightmare, COVID-19 and the pandemic. Over the last year, most, if not all, esporting events have moved into the digital space, and having to do that online and the streaming side of things. What's that like for you as the partnership manager, to try and build those relationships using only the digital space instead of all the other assets that would have been available before the pandemic? Has it been difficult, and kind of what's that been like for you over the last year?
So I'd say, obviously when it first hit, right, like everybody's hurting,
Yeah.
because I'll give you an example. Last year we had, so let's say hit in March, April of last year, right? That summer we had like 8 or 9 different events that were taking place in Orlando, right, just for Magic Gaming. And we had, and some of those events had partners attached to it, right? So obviously at first it hurts because you got to tell the partners, hey, we can't do this, we can't do that. And then there's a cost behind it, right? Like you can't, there's some events that were supposed to happen that can't happen. So like all the time and efforts you put into it are gone. So, but then it's interesting what happened, because you have worked in esports specifically, right? Well, let me say this first. I talked about relationships and partnerships.
Hmm.
You can't tell the brand, hey, sorry, like I know you pay for this partnership, but at the end of the day, COVID is here, so let's forget about this year, right?
Yeah.
Like they expect something to happen, so you have to be creative and come up with some. So, for example, we partner with a brand, with Papa John's, and when that happened, I remember giving her a call, my contact out there, and be like, hey, what about this? I know you guys are trying to push the non what do they call it, the no contact delivery. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, what if we got our players together and actually, did a commercial for you guys, and just out of the blue, right? So she loved it. So we actually did a commercial with our guys at their apartments, social distancing, like playing together and then ordering pizza and stuff. Like you have to be creative in providing that value to the partners, because that's what they want. So now the other side is, what's been interesting is I think esports, if it wasn't known before the pandemic by a lot of people, it definitely is now,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's provided a lot of opportunities for esports teams and organizations to show what they're all about, what esports is about. That's what esports is about. Is, yes, we would love to have physical events and have things in person, but if it doesn't happen, guess what? Like, we're perfectly built to be able to host events online. And so for the NBA 2K League, that's exactly what happened. Like, within a month, we had everything set up, and we had our 2020 season live on the Twitch and on YouTube Live, and we just played from our own gaming studio, and we made it work, right? So obviously, I can't say COVID is a good thing, right? Like, it's hurt everybody, but in a way, I think it's helped esports to develop to a point where maybe other people didn't know about.
I feel like almost the NBA has built a name for themselves as being a fast, agile company. So as soon as the pandemic hit, I'm not surprised to find out that you guys were able to just do a turnaround so fast, but I am incredibly impressed that within less than a month you were able to go from what are we going to do to, okay, we've got a game plan. This is what we're going to do. Like this, and this. That's awesome. To acknowledge a couple people from the chat, we have Julia joining us from Brazil. Hello. And I noticed that Lawson managed to grab a question that I had for you, and I think it's the perfect time to ask, which was, I wonder if non-sports games would come into the Olympics. Seeing some CSGO players and how quick they are figuring things out, that's impressive. So I would love to get your opinion on esports joining the Olympics, and if you feel like that's like the next milestone for esports, and if you do think it should be included in the Olympics, what games do you think should be an Olympic sport for esports?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, I don't work for the Olympic Committee, right? So, like, I can't tell you what they have in mind or what the future is going to hold. I'll tell you this. I think, personal opinion, right, that the Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee have a perfect opportunity to merge, sports and esports once and for all, right? Because that's been a discussion that's been going on forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where should esports be in the Olympics, and some people think it's not sports, and they're not real athletes. Like, that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
What I see on the game side is that, obviously, because it's the Olympics, you can't really bring a shooting game, right? That's the way I see it. You can't bring Call of Duty and Overwatch, or if you bring in League of Legends, nobody's going to understand what they're watching. So it doesn't work. And then when it comes to sports, the issue with sports games is that then you get to use the player's image, right? So now you're going into a different type of issue, so a challenge. So there are games out there that, if you ask me, I think would work. Such as like Rocket League, right? Like, it's technically, there's sports integrated in it. It's non-violent. It's all ages, and it's not something that would mess with anybody's images or rights, right? So that's the first one that came to mind. I'm sure there are others out there, but yeah, it's tricky because you have to find yourself in between the traditional sports, esports, shooting games. Like, there's a lot in there, but I hope they do. I really hope.
I completely agree, and it's interesting that I've never even thought, because I've thought about this question a lot about the Olympics taking on esports. And I never once crossed my mind that, because I was like, oh yeah, CS:GO would be a good one, Call of Duty would be a good one, but I never even thought the shooting aspect makes it not for everyone, and the Olympics is known for being for everyone. That's the whole point of the Olympics. So it actually really does cut down on the roster of what games you can do. And then again, as you said, the images, like the fact that you're playing this professional athlete who's also in games, and you're kind of like using them to propel yourself, even though you're not them. So yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, and then think about, like, let's say, okay, NBA 2K is the next Olympic esports, right? Like, so then you've got the US team that's playing in the actual Olympics, and then you've got how do you separate, like, I'm from France, right? So is France going to play with the French team against with the actual players from the French team in the game, and then US play with the US team? And like, what about some smaller countries out there who barely have basket? See what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You get into those issues which would make it more more complicated.
And people playing the same person, like if you have two teams that have the same player on both teams or in the tournament, it could really make things weird. So yeah, that's definitely something I never thought of. I'm sure that's a really, as Lawson said, interesting. I had not really thought of it much in that way. So it's definitely a very interesting take on that. Which kind of brings me into my next question. Um, so, you've kind of shared like all this information about how you do partnership stuff and how you were involved in the NBA and the Olympics and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, like just a quick the Olympics short there. So, given all this information and given your place in the industry, where do you kind of see esports as a whole heading next? Like, what do you think is going to be the next big thing in esports that is maybe coming from the NBA, maybe from your side, maybe from somewhere else?
That is such a like loaded question.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no, a good one, but like it could go. I mean, here's what I'd say: like esports is so tightly connected to technology that if you ask, hey, where's technology going to go in the next few years? Like it's kind of hard to answer, right? You have an idea, but like who knows what's going to be coming up, right? And I
Yeah.
feel kind of the same way about esports. Is I feel like I'll tell you this: when I first started working for the Magic, I had a friend of mine who actually used to be a coworker of mine at the soccer team, and he called me up one day when just talking about my new job at the Magic and esports, and he's like, esports, huh? I was like, you know what? How do you feel about esports? And I was like, well, listen, the way things are going, I mean, anytime now you're gonna have athletes that will look, that will watch esports players, right? Instead of random esports fans or players watching athletes play. And I was like, I'd even go and say that because it's a generic, it's, I've been playing since I was a kid, and I'm probably gonna let my kid play it a little more than maybe my parents let me play, right? And like as you move through the generations, I think you get to the point where parents will take their kids to go and watch esports games, right? Or matches, and you'll have clinics, and so and it's not like I was the first one to say it. Like you could see it coming, right? But I was telling him about all this, and it's like, no way. It's like you insane. There's no way it's going to go that far. I was like, well, guess what? Like now 3 years later, and it's only been 3 years. It's exactly what's happening, right? So I'll say the one industry that I think people got to watch for really closely is mobile games, because I think there's just so many opportunities there. But yeah, aside from that, like it is so closely connected to technology that I mean, who knows what's the next next thing in esports going to be. I can tell you on the sports side, the NBA is always expanding. So for example, like a good example was this past year we added a team that's actually a non-NBA team as part of the NBA 2K League, which is something that you really wouldn't be able to do in the NBA, right? Like you,
Yeah.
you would, usually you stick with teams here in North America. Well, now we have a team called Genji, which is based in South Korea, right? And they're known throughout the esports space for other teams and franchises. So because of that, like we literally have the opportunity through the NBA 2K League to expand to other markets, other continents. Now we have combines in the UK and in China. We have, so I mean, there's no boundaries. You could really just make anything happen.
And I really like what you mentioned there about mobile games because I think mobile games, I feel like the first hurdle that mobile games need to make is convincing mobile gamers that they are indeed gamers. Like if you spend, you know, 10, 15 hours a week playing games on your phone, you're a gamer. Like
Right.
and I feel like people are like, no, I'm just playing Candy Crush. But it's like, even the smallest games can become tournaments and can amass like a massive following. And that's probably exactly why NBA is expanding across the world, because there's games and sports all across the world, and now you're going past NBA into different teams in South Korea. So I think that's fantastic. It's a really great way to get almost everybody involved.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I've had panels or presentations in the past where like I'll be in the room and you know I don't know 20, 30 people, and I'll say, I'll start like that. I'll say, hey, who's a gamer in this room, right? And you'll have like one brave soul like raising their hand, like kind of scared of saying it. And then I'll say, all right, who plays games on PS4, and who plays games on Xbox, and who plays games on phones, and I started like going through it, and by the end I asked the same question again, like, so who's a gamer, like, and obviously you have a lot more hands up. So like to your point, whether you want to admit you're a gamer or not, like if you play some kind of games on some platform, then you're a gamer to some capacity, and that's why when you look at numbers for esports and the reach that esports has, it is so big because
Hmm.
you can literally just reach such a massive amount of people through gaming of some kind, right?
And I think that is that's really what propels the stereotype of people saying, "Oh well, esports players aren't real sports. Like I can just play a game. I can download that and play the game." And I feel like I almost had that exact same feeling until the first time I watched an esports tournament. I've watched a couple of Magic NBA 2K um, tournaments, and I've watched a couple League of Legends tournaments, and it's like, me playing the game and me watching them play the game, it's like the exact same thing as me grabbing a football to go play football in the backyard. Like I can do that. I'm not a football player. Like, so
There's a
definitely
difference.
that.
There's a difference. We had something like that happen where our guys, so we have our own gaming studio, and then right next to it we have a gym, right? That's part of the complex where we are. And so our guys go, and we actually have mandatory training sessions for the guys, so that we want them to be healthy, and so they went out and were working out, and they saw just a bunch of kids, and they started talking, and told them they're professional 2K players, and the kids were like, yeah, whatever, like we play 2K, and like, so we literally brought them back to the studio and had them play against their players, right? And it's kind of like, it's interesting because you talked about the Olympics. The only way for you to understand how good or how fast those people are, right, at the Olympics, is by having just an average Joe, a random guy next to him, and have him run the same thing. Like if you do 100 meters, have a random person just right there run with them, and you'll see the difference in skill, right, or physical abilities, right? Same thing in esports. You can play, yes.
Mhm.
Now, can you make that much money playing at a professional level? It's a whole different story.
Exactly. And I think that's a great point, comparing it to, like, if we have Usain Bolt run and then we have me run, it's going to be, you know, a 30-minute gap between when he finishes and when I finish. Um, so this kind of brings me to the next question that I had. I guess we're almost circling back now to when I mentioned that the NBA has kind of had to go online, and you mentioned how COVID-19 affected that and pushed you guys online. So I kind of wonder about multi-streaming or streaming in general. How has that played into the NBA and your kind of role at NBA to bring that audience still to your streams, and to bring them out so they still are communicating with the NBA? How has that played in, or has it played into your plan at all, in terms of, going live, getting the audience there, uh, communicating with them, setting up the live events? Has that been a part of your process at all over the last year?
So my process specifically, or Magic Gaming's process.
I think we'd be interested in both, but I guess we can probably start from NBA and then move down to yours, or
Yeah.
however you want.
Obviously the beauty of esports is you can watch from anywhere, right? And you don't need a pay subscription. You can just turn on, Twitch or YouTube Live or whatever you want, and actually watch esports. So that brings esports, that brings, advantages, but also disadvantages when it comes to, being able to monetize that. I'd say on the 2K side, on the NBA side, it's been pretty interesting to watch, a league like that starting on Twitch, then jumping on Twitch and YouTube, then jumping on Twitch, YouTube, and now last year we're on ESPN2, right, which is, you know uh, main media, but still. And so it is very different when you're there in person. Like I've gone to, we were talking about this before. I've gone to some of the events that the NBA League has put together, right? Um, and like being out there in New York in the league studio, seeing like the whole process behind it and the whole production is quite impressive. You would not think, there's that much behind
Mhm.
the screen. I've gone to events here in Orlando where we hosted all NBA 2K teams for in-season tournament, and same thing. I saw it was at Full Sail University, and I saw like what the production looks like. Like, so I'm not the best person to talk about like the impact of it on esports and on the NBA 2K League, because that's not my job. But I've seen what it's done. It's pretty impressive. And again, the 2K League, looking at the way they're expanding, like we are talking about earlier, that's part of the expansion strategy, right? Is to be able to have those games streamed or broadcast in every country out there, right? So now they have to deal with, I don't remember the names, but I know there's one in Canada, there's one in India, there's one in China or Korea. Like, that's the goal. But yeah, I'm not sure if I answer your question exactly, but I may not be the best person to talk about the multi streaming at once.
Yeah, I still think you managed to nail the answer perfectly though, because there is a lot of production when it comes to behind the scenes. Like I'm not gonna show anybody what I'm looking at right now. Behind me, the set looks great, but in front of me, no, thank you. That's off camera, and I think it's the same way for even like beyond NBA. Like you look at news stations and stuff where you see the camera track from left to right on the news station, and then when you see from the other side, there's like this whole apparatus and arm and all that stuff that's part of it that you would never even see. So I think we've had a really great conversation. We're coming close to the end of the show here, so I think I'd love to open the door for you to talk, directly to our audience. Let them know where they can connect with you, where they can connect with the NBA, maybe what you have coming up next, what the NBA has coming up next, and I can throw those links on the screen as well as you go ahead.
Sure, that'd be great. Well, thanks. So things coming up. The 2K League is starting their season 4, starting in probably the first week of May. They just announced the official drafts on March 13th. So for those of you who don't know, it's modeled just like the NBA, right? We have combines, we have an official draft where the best 2K players are going to be picked. That's on March 13th. And then in the middle, our guys will be coming to market, right? So then we house them and all that. So that's what's going on the 2K League side. On Magic Gaming side, there's lots coming up. We're actually getting ready to announce a few new partners in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. I can't really say too much about it yet. And also we have a few programs that we're putting together. The goal is we want to stand out, in esports in the industry, but also as a 2K team. And so there's still a lot that we can do. So we're working on that. And then when it comes to just support Magic Gaming. If you want to get a hold of me specifically, I use LinkedIn quite a bit. I spend a lot of time on that platform. So feel free to add me or send me any questions you have. And then Magic Gaming, we're on all the platforms, right? Mostly I would say Twitter, Instagram. We're building a new channel on YouTube, which is if you're a 2K fan, it talks a lot about tips, and you will hear a head coach and our players and they'll talk about the game and to build my players. So and so Magic Gaming, Twitter, Instagram, any way you can support. Lots of good things coming up.
And I also grabbed that 2K. I believe this is the 2K League NBA link, because you talked about the signups there. So if anybody wants to check that out. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and do the outro. So I'll toggle you off for now, and then I'll come by at the end of the show so we can continue talking.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. Have a good one.
Bye.
So thanks so much for everybody for joining us on today's stream and asking your questions in the live chat. Again, today was our stream about esports and Olympic Games, but it doesn't end here. You can check us out at on Anchor. I'm just going to pop the link on the stream. Oops, I deleted it beforehand, so I'm going to pull that up right now. But our show is live on Anchor. It's where you can get this stream, and you can subscribe to our podcast over on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and here is the link there. So that's where you can catch the podcast after, so you can listen to the audio, go through all the questions again, and share it with your friends and family. Thanks so much for joining us for today's stream. As always, I've been Randy here from Restream. This show is bi-weekly, so we'll be live not next week, but the week after. However, we have lots of shows here on Restream, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and have yourself a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.